Now, with me in studio to discuss this is Dan Perry, international affairs analyst. Now, the U.S. denying that there is any intention or meaning behind this delay, but could this be a message to Israel to hold off in the north?
It could be. I don't put it past them. I don't necessarily believe the protestations that the whole delay was technical. The criticism of Netanyahu, I think, derives not so much from skepticism that something might have been delayed, or even outrage at the idea that it would be delayed, as if the Americans owed Israel anything in particular, but a notion that Netanyahu is reckless in publicly picking a fight with the Biden administration, which most observers would argue has been very supportive of Israel. Indeed, the last remaining bastion of significant support, and has been throughout a supplier of munitions to Israel, as well as a diplomatic umbrella at the UN, without which Israel will be facing sanctions. So a public criticism of the US this way is extremely rare. In an election year, it's particularly explosive. And there is, with Netanyahu, always the suspicion that there are political shenanigans in the background, that maybe he believes his base likes to see him standing up to the US. And clearly there is a risk here in alienating Israel's critical and perhaps last supporter. It all sounds like conspiracy theorizing, but perhaps the most credible one is that he's trying to help Trump get elected by furthering the narrative that Biden is somehow in opposition to Israel, and it's no secret at all that Netanyahu is biding his time, hoping somehow to survive until a hoped-for, from his perspective, Trump presidency arrives, which will be a whole different animal, with presumably less humanitarian pressure on Israel, a completely transactional environment, which Netanyahu would feel more comfortable in.
Certainly a risky move. Serious situation. The IDF says it's prepared, but is Israel and the public ready to pay the price that it might cost?
Quite possibly not. It's dispiriting to hear Guterres contriving to create equivalence between Israel and Hezbollah, when the reality is that it's not a tit for tat or exchanges. Hezbollah has been attacking Israel since shortly after October 7th. In effect, Lebanon is attacking Israel. And I think a clear message should go out that this has to stop, and the international community demands it stop. So it isn't a question of escalation. Is Israel prepared to force it to stop? I fear that Israel is understandably deterred by the fear of long-range rockets that its air defenses cannot necessarily repel. That could cause tremendous damage in Tel Aviv and to Israel's infrastructure and electricity grid and the rest of it. It's a little bit similar to the fact that Israel's hand is stayed somewhat in its war against Hamas by the presence of the hostages. In effect, the rockets from Hezbollah are analogous somehow to the presence of the hostages in Gaza. It's a complicating factor. That's why Israel has tolerated this for over 8 months. It is incredible to conceive of 8 months of attacks from Hezbollah being somehow acquiesced to, 80,000 people displaced from their homes who are increasingly in a state of rage, massive dislocation to Israel's economy and to the proper procedures of life in the north, and somehow Israel puts up with it. I don't know if the deterrence that the rockets constitute, in effect, will forever prevail. And at some point, and the pressure is building, Israel may have to do something in the hopes that it can prevent the rockets from being fired. Maybe try to keep it low level, maybe try to seize control of the hills and in effect create a security zone. The hills right across the border, the Israeli border inside Lebanon, which Hezbollah uses essentially as natural rocket launchers, could be occupied for a time. The security zone could be reestablished, the one that was dismantled essentially in 2000 when Israel pulled out of Lebanon. You can conceive of certain in-between scenarios that are less than full-scale war.
So there's still that possibility.
I think so, and the hope would be that Hezbollah would be deterred by Lebanese public opinion, which is why Israel is making these threats. It's not that there's any enmity in Israel for the people in Beirut. And Israel knows very well that the Lebanese Christians in particular are potentially its best friends in the region. Israel doesn't want to strike at Beirut and knows it would be unfair. But on the other hand, the threat I suppose they calculate is necessary to create deterrence on the part of Hezbollah. But it clearly has failed to deter them from continuing the attacks. And I would hope for a greater amount of moral clarity and strategic focus on the part of the world community, rather than to pretend like there's some bilateral problem here.
Right, certainly. I mean, we're seeing incoming rockets increasing and becoming the new normal here, and there's no easy solution, it seems.
It certainly is. There's no easy
Perry.
solution, but how can it be considered normal?
Unfortunately, that's the everyday that we're seeing right now.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for your time, Dan Perry.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.